Sometimes you just want to sit back, watch the latest episode of your favorite show, and be lazy. But you also want to see your numbers go up to make yourself feel like you're being productive. As a massive fan of idle games, I know this all too well. That's why I've been implementing this insanely lazy method to stock up both my elemental crystals and clusters. My name is Tenelin, and welcome to another Final Fantasy XIV Gathering video. We're going to be taking advantage of two different methods that can be combined to bring in a ton of crystals and clusters that you'll be able to use for your crafting or sell on the market board for a pretty good profit. By combining these two methods, you'll be able to make an upwards of 200 to 300,000 gil per hour. The best part is that this is accessible relatively early into your Final Fantasy XIV journey. You only need to have completed the ARR questline to unlock the map of the location that we're going to be using, as well as have your botanist and miner at level 50 in order to start. Now, one of the skills that we're going to be using is a requirement of level 74, and that one does give you a large boost in the amount of items that you'll gather, so that's where I probably would recommend you be, but you are able to actually do this at level 50. Because this is a method that can be completed with a lower barrier to entry, I'm going to be including a decent amount of information that's aimed at newer players who may not be familiar with the details of gathering that many of us know and love. For those who are new, welcome in. The world of gathering in Final Fantasy XIV can be a bit overwhelming, so let's break down what you need to know. First off, crystals and clusters are required for all crafting in Final Fantasy XIV, and this makes them one of the highest demand items of the game, especially during patches that add in new crafted gear, food, and potions when the newest raids are released. These are the even number patches such as 7.2 and 7.4. For the first part of this method, we'll be taking advantage of a few timed gathering nodes that are in Mordona. Timed, or as the game calls them, unspoiled gathering nodes, are nodes that only appear temporarily at certain times of the Eorzean day, that is to say, the in-game day. If you look in your gathering log, you'll see that when you hover over certain items, they will say they have a time of appearance, and then it will say from 2 to 4, or from 14 to 16. Those are the times that they're actually available in the Eorzean time zone. So that's what we're going to be focusing on for this method. Now, for the majority of these types of nodes, they spawn only once or twice per day at the same time, both AM and PM. But for these particular nodes that we're going to be focusing on, they are unique in that they will spawn multiple times per in-game day. These are all in this section of Mordona, and I've marked them on my map here. The letters are the botanist nodes, and the numbers are the miner nodes. These nodes spawn essentially every 10 minutes, and they can be gathered a single time each spawn. That's where the lazy method comes in. You'll spend less than 1 minute every 10 minutes to gather a ton of clusters, and then you can go back to being AFK, watching your shows, or just staring at the wall, contemplating all existence. Oh, new node has spawned. Let's go gather it. These nodes are unique in the fact that they each contain all types of clusters, so you can pick and choose what you're looking to gather based on what your needs are or the market demand. Now that we understand the nodes, let's talk about the skills you'll be using to gather them. There are two unique skills for this type of gathering that are important for you to know. The first is the 12's Bounty. This increases the amount gathered on these nodes by 3. Now, this isn't anything crazy by any means, it's just adding a few extra clusters onto the gather, and that will add up over time, and the GP cost is so low that it's well worth it. Now, the more important one is the Giving Land. This is the level 74 skill that I mentioned before. Now, this one is key to why this method is so good. The skill increases the amount of yield that you can get on crystals, clusters, and shards by a random amount. This amount varies between 0 and 30. There doesn't appear to be any stat-related scaling, it's just randomly generated how much more you'll get based on how the skill feels like you deserve. This means that our gathering yield can vary greatly, but on average, you're going to be getting around 15 more per hit on the node. If you've been paying attention to the clips in the background, you'll see a pretty varied amount of clusters gathered each hit, going as low as into the single digits, but all the way up into the 30s as well. Because we are using the Giving Land and it can give us more than any other skill by far, the final skill that you'll want to be using is Solid Reason or Ageless Words, just depending if you're on Botanist or Miner, and if you're level 90, you'll be using Wise to the World whenever you get a Eureka moment. The reasoning for this is that we just want to increase the amount of hits that we can actually do on the node, because we can get anywhere from a couple all the way up into the 30s each hit. This will help maximize the amount of clusters we can get by adding additional integrity, which will on average give more clusters per node than any other skill we could use. You could use something like King's Yield 2 for a guaranteed +2 clusters on each hit, but that only gives you 12 more on a standard 6 integrity node, where a good Giving Lands proc can give you nearly triple that in a single integrity. I've tested them both out, and on average, the Giving Land just gives so many more clusters. Using this method, you'll get somewhere between 150 to 250 clusters on each node that spawns, which adds up insanely fast. Now, just a quick PSA, while you're doing this method, because you are doing it as an AFK method, please do not forget to empty your clusters out of your inventory. If you hit the cap of 9,999, you can continue to gather, and all of them will just disappear into the ether. Trust me, I have made this mistake in the past, more times than I care to admit. Now, what's the best way to keep track of all of these spawns? Especially if you're trying to be lazy and have your game running in the background. Well, we can take advantage of something like the Teamcraft alarm overlay. I'll put an alarm list in the description for you to use, and you can just pull this up and it will show you each time one of the nodes spawns. Now, it's very important to know this is not breaking the terms of service. It's just a simple program that tracks predictable spawn times of all of the items in the game, and it just puts them into a small overlay that you can pin in front of your programs. If you want to get a detailed rundown of how to install this, please check out this video, but the quick and easy version is to download the Teamcraft application, open up my alarm group, add it to your account, click this eyeball for the overlay, and then click this pin icon to have it always be in front of anything else you have open. All of the links will be in the description. You'll notice that there are only 2 timers on this list though, and that's because it will update as they spawn, as it's considered the same node repeated over and over. For example, on this one, the botanist node spawned 3 times in a row, so once one of them despawns, the next one will show up on the timer with around a 3-minute timer until it spawns again. Once they're up, gather your node, and I like to hop on my mount, fly up a little bit, just because there are a couple random fates that will spawn in this area, and the mobs do have AoEs, and you don't want to end up dying while you're alt tabbed out. That covers everything for the method for the clusters though. But what do we do for the crystals? Well, great news. That method is even lazier, and we can do it while we're gathering clusters. To do this, we're going to be taking advantage of retainer ventures every 40 minutes, sending them out in the summoning bell in Mordona between every 4th gathering node spawn. For this, all you need to have is a botanist or minor retainer. They need to be level 26 and have gear that gives them 1,620 perception. This will give you the maximum of 120 crystals per venture that you can earn. Retainers only care about how much perception they have in order to hit the stat requirements for gathering items. They have certain tiers that you're able to hit to increase their yield, but do have a maximum amount that you can get. Once you've got your gear on your retainers, you'll click Assign Venture, you go to Botany or Mining, go to the level 26 to 30 category, and you'll see all of the different crystals at the top. You'll want to go ahead and choose the one that you need, and you're good to go. Depending on how many retainers you have that meet this requirement, you'll be able to get a varied amount of crystals this way, but even just with the default of 2 retainers, this will definitely help you stack up a good amount of crystals. If you watched one of my earlier videos where I quick synthesized a ton of Levin Silk for crafting materia, you can see that I managed to get tens of thousands of crystals this way over the course of a month or so, which, with crystals varying in price between 50 to 100 gil, adds up a lot. Just a reminder for you here as well, be sure to empty your inventory of crystals as well into your retainers so that you don't lose anything that you get above the 9,999. Same with this, if you collect them from your retainers, you can overcap and those will just disappear. Now that we know both of the methods that we're going to be using though, let's talk about how much you can actually gather and how profitable this method can be if you're just looking to farm this for some gil. The crystals we gather via our retainers aren't going to be the most profitable method, but it is a good supplement that requires about 2 minutes of work every 40 minutes, so it's well worth doing. For simplicity's sake, let's break down our method per hour, meaning that each hour we get 180 crystals. That's 1.5 ventures worth. At current pricing on the crystal server, each elemental crystal is around 50 gil, meaning you can make about 9,000 gil per retainer per hour. That's nothing crazy, but it does add up over time. Now the big moneymaker is the clusters. There is a decent amount of randomists gathering these, so I did a few 1-hour sessions where I recorded how many I gathered, and averaging those out, I was able to get around 1,400 clusters per hour. Lightning clusters were what I focused on at the time, as they're worth the most on my server, going for about 150 gil each, meaning that if I'm using this method, I'm bringing in about 210,000 gil an hour on just clusters. Now with these two methods combined, you're going to be making around 230,000 gil per hour with just your 2 base retainers, and all of this is done with about 5 minutes of actual work in that hour. As long as you're able to check into the game occasionally, this lazy method is well worth your time. Keep in mind though, all of these prices are during the absolute slowest time of the patch cycle. At the time that I'm recording this, we're a few months away from patch 7.2, and prices are at their low points, so I personally don't plan on selling these anytime soon. Instead, I'll be saving up all of my stock for my own crafting and looking to sell extras once we get a little bit closer to the larger patch cycles, and the price will hopefully see a spike of anywhere between 50 to 100% more than it is now. I remember early into 7.0 when I ran out of clusters because I did not stock up enough for myself, I had to buy some for about 210 a piece, so just keep that in mind. This might not be the best time to sell, or just keep an eye on where the prices fluctuate. If you did find this video helpful, please do me a favor, give it a like. If you'd like to see more content similar to this, don't forget to subscribe. I've put a goal for myself to get to 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and I want to continue putting out helpful guides to the Final Fantasy XIV crafting and gathering community. Thank you so much for watching, and happy gathering.